Have you ever felt that you have done everything right and yet your career seems stuck? If so, you're not alone. You work hard, people trust you, you are the person everyone depends on. Yet somehow others seem to move ahead while you remain exactly where you are. Today, I'm going to share 5 habits that quietly destroy your relevance. 5 habits you may be practicing right now that quietly signal to your organization that you are an operator and not a future leader. Pay particular attention to number 3 because it's a trap that catches some of the smartest and most capable professionals. One warning, if you feel a little uncomfortable by the end of this video, then so be it. That's actually a good thing, trust me. Let's begin. You over-explain the details. This is one of the saddest things to watch. A capable professional stands before a room full of senior leaders and begins explaining the entire chronology of events, determined to prove that no gap exists in his thinking. Meanwhile, the audience is becoming increasingly impatient and hostile. Have you ever seen this happen? Someone begins with, "Let me start from the beginning," and within minutes, the interruptions begin. "So what's the issue? Can you get to the point, please?" And so on and on and on. But before long, the inevitable happens. He loses his train of thought. He goes back, he starts again, he stumbles, he becomes increasingly defensive, and before you know, he becomes a rambling mess. The irony is that he is usually the person who understands the problem better than anyone else. But higher order conversations do not reward exhaustive coverage. They reward patterns, consequences, and trade-offs. The moment you force a room to sit through the operational narrative, you stop being seen as someone who shapes decisions and start being seen as someone who merely explains operations. The hard reality is this: details only proves involvement. Patterns reveal significance. You might think knowing all the facts prove you are in charge, but if you are experiencing this next point, you're not actually in charge of anything. You accept delayed consultation. You might feel important because you are still being invited to the big meetings, but ask yourself, are you helping to frame the problem and shape the solution, or are you simply nodding your head and agreeing to execute what has already been decided? Ask yourself this: are you invited when the problem is still being defined, or only after the strategy has been set? Now, here is perhaps the most important truth in corporate life. Influence begins only in the interpretive space. Before the facts are complete, when doubts exist, when clarity is being sought, when the risks are high, that is where problems are framed, assumptions are challenged, and decisions begin to take shape. If you are brought in only to figure out how to execute what others have already framed, the real decision was already made without you. You do not have influence, you merely have execution space. Remember this rule: early consultation gives a person interpretive authority. Delayed consultation gives him operational relevance only. At this point, you may be saying, "But my competence is exactly why they rely on me." That brings us to number 3, the trap I warned you about at the start. You retreat into competence. This is particularly chilling because it proves you are fully trapped, not just figuratively, but literally. It is a trap that is harder to leave because it is psychological in nature. It works on your mind. The reality is that as work becomes more senior, it also becomes more ambiguous. There is no immediate "hurrah, job well done," etc. For a highly competent professional who is dependent on instant validation, this is deeply unsettling. So what do? You subconsciously run back to the operational firefighting that still feels clear and gives you an immediate sense of self-worth. You flee the discomfort of strategic leadership for the safety of execution. You are no longer just resting inside your competence, you are living there. And finally, you can be seen running around with a worried look on your face, feeling important, quietly dismissing those bookish leaders who do not understand what it takes to execute. You take pride in being the person who solves the operational problems. You enjoy being the firefighter, the big hero. And the worst part, your organization is perfectly happy to leave you there. If you do this, you probably tell yourself you are just stepping up and taking ownership. Number 4 explains why this is a dangerous lie. You confuse containment with ownership. When the system breaks, you step in and absorb the chaos. You think this makes you an indispensable leader. But mature organizations don't see it that way. They are simply using you as a shock absorber. Your burden is being framed as a virtue and you are experiencing your own exploitation as evidence of worth. But you're solving the wrong problems. The work that keeps a person busy is often the same work that keeps him fixed. If you have been nodding along to these first four, you need to know how to break out, which brings us to the final thing you must start doing immediately. You are afraid of the first refusal. This is counterintuitive and you need to pay particular attention because it is easy to misunderstand what I am talking about. You have to stop rescuing the system from its own bad design. Organizations are full of them, poorly designed processes, weak controls, ambiguous responsibilities. You never designed them, and somehow you become responsible for their success. And for you, nothing is more terrifying than allowing a process to fail, even when it genuinely deserves to fail. So you absorb the strain, you compensate, you work harder, you step in, but as long as you quietly absorb every weakness, the weakness never becomes visible enough for the organization to fix it. You must learn the discipline of the first refusal. This does not mean sabotage. It means holding a gap open long enough for it to be seen and redirecting attention from the symptom to the design. Stop earning your relevance by absorbing strain. If you are doing these 5 things, you are participating in your own stagnation. You have to learn to distinguish between being important to the operation and being consequential to the organization's direction. Hi, I am Venkatachalam Vishwanathan, author of The Relevance Trap. If this resonated with you, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments which of these fine signs have you been guilty of doing. See you in the next video.